there and welcome. This is Preeti. I am so glad you're joining me. Today I'm using this Christmas Miracle stamp set and the poinsettia that I just showed you. And I'm also taking this metallic gold cardstock and I'm going to stamp that poinsettia multiple times using Versamark ink actually, and I'm going to heat emboss it using gold embossing powder. So the card that we're creating today is a 3D poinsettia, but what I mean by that is we're going to take the simple one dimension stamp set here that you see, and we're going to create multiple layers using this stamp to create a 3D poinsettia flower. When I stamped the VersaFine ink, it was hard for you to see where I was stamping because the paper is so dark and the Versamark ink is quite transparent, so it's hard to see. But when I put that gold embossing powder, you can see how beautifully that stamp has stamped. And I'm going to just use this antique gold embossing powder and I'm going to heat set that. So I've done that 3 times, and now we're going to cut these poinsettias. So the first one here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dissect this flower into multiple layers. So the first layer here, you can see I'm kind of figuring out what are the layers. So there are some layers that are the topmost, that is these 3 layers here that I'm showing you right now. The smaller leaves are the first layer on the top. Then the second one is the 2 larger ones, and then the bottom ones are below that, and then the base layer. And so we're going to cut them in those different sections. So the first cut I'm going to do is the smallest one, the first layer that I showed you, the smaller 3 leaves. And I'm going to make sure that I'm not cutting the flower haphazardly. I want to make sure that I am cutting it carefully because I want to use the other petals in the same embossed flower for the next layers too. So I'm not going to waste just making one flower and then throwing it away and then stamping another one. So I'm just trying to get as much as I can get from the first stamp itself. So here you can see I'm going very slowly. I'm making sure to keep the scissor very close to the embossed line, so that way I'm not cutting off the embossing either. Now you can see how I've cut that, and now I'm going to take the second layer, so that is the 2 larger petals is my second layer. When I say second layer, from the top. So here you can see I'm just going back and I'm going to cut this 2 larger flowers, one on the left side and the other one on the right side, again making sure being careful not to cut away any other part of the other petal that I have here. So here you go, I've just cut this one here, and now I'm going to cut the opposite side, the larger one on the opposite side. And again, I'm just going to very carefully fussy cut this image, just using a very nice sharp pair of scissors. Almost done here, and once I'm done with this, it's time to do the third layer. And for the third layer, I'm going to take the second poinsettia flower that we've stamped and embossed, and I'm going to use so those are you can see the 2 layers that we have cut, and now the layers that are underneath those flowers we're going to cut. So there's really no science here. You can actually cut however you want. You just need to put it back the same way, and I'll show you what I mean by that as we progress into the card. So you don't have to necessarily cut all these layers that I'm cutting. You can just cut 2 layers. You can just cut 1 layer, like you can just cut the base flower and then you can cut 1 more layer on the top. So and then you can cut the flowers however you want. Whatever flowers you want to cut, you can cut however you want. But only thing what I'm saying is, when you look at the flower, there is a way that the flower is built. The illustration of the flower is built in such a way that there are petals made in different layers. So if you can just kind of cut through those layers, making sure that that's how you're making it, that's how you're progressing, then you're good to go. And now for the third layer, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the flower in its entirety. So you can see 1 full flower there, and then bits and pieces of that same poinsettia. Now I'm just going to take a freehand circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is something on which we're going to build the flower. And here I'm just playing with this flower to make that paper fold in the way I want. So I'm just taking a paintbrush end and I'm just rolling the edges over the paintbrush to create the petal to move. So because we're creating a 3D floral image, you want the petals to have some movements. You don't want them to be rigid, linear. You want to have those curves and those variations in that petal. And then I'm going to just add some liquid glue into the center and adhere onto that freehand circle that we created. So that just gives a place for the flower to build on. Keep in mind, because this is a metallic gold cardstock, the surface is quite slick. So it takes a little bit for the liquid adhesive to dry. So keep that in mind as you're working with this. And now here I'm taking so now we're building from the bottom up. So when I say the bottom layer, the next layer from the bottom, the second layer from the bottom, I am going to adhere that. I'm just going to add to the bottom edge of that petal cluster some liquid glue, and I'm going to adhere it kind of to the center of the flower, but exactly in the same place where the actual flower is. So it's not on top of the edge of the flower. So you can see there, it's a little further down, and I'm pushing it to the center. So that gives us, it gives an illusion that the second layer of flowers from the top are smaller than the bottom layer. You know what I'm saying? So we're kind of reducing the petal sizes as we're building it upwards. So all you need to do for that is just push that petal inside to the center, and all that center will be covered as we keep building, and that gives that that illusion, as I said, as if it's a three-dimensional, 3 layers, different sizes layers as you're building it. And now I'm going to take the third layer from the bottom, and I'm going to add these 2 large petals, and for this I'm going to use some foam adhesive, and I'm going to apply this foam adhesive only to the bottom of that petal, just like how I added the other petals where I added the glue only to the bottom. The same way I'm just adding the glue to the bottom of this petal, so that way you can curve the top part of the petal. If you have a foam adhesive to the edge of the petal, it'll be straight, it would be linear. You won't be able to give that curls and curves to your petal. I hope that makes sense. So the glue is not stopping you from molding those petals. And now for the second petal, the single petal that we cut to, I'm doing the same thing again, just adding the foam adhesive to the bottom of the leaf and curving the top edge of the leaf and pushing it into the center, making it even more shorter than the previous layer. And here is the final one, and for this one I'm going to just add foam adhesive to the 2 sides, so the right side and the left side, again not to the edge of the petal. You see the edges are clear of foam adhesive, and that's again the same reason I want those petals to curl. And I'm going to add some adhesive in the center, and I'm going to place this right on top of it, and you can see all those dimensions that we've created just with this one stamp, and we made it into a 3D flower. It's so simple, so it's so much impact on that flower. And I hope you can see all those layers that we have built using this stamp. And now all that's left to do is I'm going to embellish this with some stones in the center. So that's why even if the center is all yucky and mushed up, don't worry, you're going to add the stones. And the key is to add stones in different sizes. Don't just add one size. So when you look at a poinsettia in real life too, the center or the stamen part of the poinsettia, they're all different variation. They're different sizes. They're not same size even in nature. So we're kind of creating that similar attribute to that flower in this obviously in this 3D resemblance of something like a poinsettia. And I'm just using different sizes of this gemstone from Crafty Meraki in the center. There is a lot of glue in there. Don't worry, it's going to look white now, but when it dries, it's all going to be clear. Like you can see here, I built this earlier, way before I started making the video, and you can see how the glue has all dried up and it is clear, and you have this beautiful center, stone center in the middle. Oh my goodness, it was so stunning. Now I'm going to take a white note card here, which I've cut into 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm taking this gold flakes from NUVO, and I'm going to use some liquid glue. So you can use matte medium, which I showed you before, but most of us don't have that. Glue is something that is easily available, but when you're using glue, make sure you dilute it down a bit with water. I diluted it a bit too much. Diluted it down with a little bit with water, and then apply. You don't want the glue to be very thick when you're applying your these flakes, and then just go to town with it. Just keep applying that onto that surface. I'm using a white brush here. It was a mess working with this gilded flakes, but the end result was so beautiful. Really, really beautiful. I just loved it. I've had this flake sitting in my stash for so long and I've never used it, so I thought this would be a great project to use it. And here you can see, after I finished applying the first layer, I applied the glue once more right over the surface of the previous layer, and I'm going to add more because I want I don't know, I wanted to give it like a antique glass look. I don't know if that makes sense, but it just looks beautiful. The gilded gold flakes look so pretty on a white cardstock. I mean, I was just loving it. I don't know if you can see that whole thing on the video, but in real life it was just stunning. I was loving how that flakes was looking on the white cardstock. I'm just going to clean up this mess and be back, and here you go, the whole thing, and you can see how beautifully it shines, and just stunning. I'm going to take, and I've also gone ahead and stamped and embossed the sentiment onto a white cardstock using the same gold, antique gold embossing powder. And I'm just going to put this card together now. So to do that, all I'm going to do is apply this flower directly with just some glue onto that gilded gold flake area. And I'm not using any foam tapes, only because it is it's quite dimensional anyway. And then I realized I had not I had not scented that gilded flake area, so I had to cut this cardstock down, which was not a bad idea, which was not a problem at all. But I had to take the poinsettia off it because it wouldn't go through my guillotine cutter, and because it had not yet adhered, I could do that. And here I've gone ahead and cut the two sides, and now you can see that both the sides are even and it's perfect, and I can place the sentiment right in the center of that card panel, right underneath that flower, and everything will be scented evenly, so I'm not having one side larger than the other side. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, after this, all I had to do was, so here what I'm saying is you don't necessarily have to have the gilded snow flakes, gold flakes. You can always even use gold splatter and you'll be good to go. I had this, so I was using it. Even gold splatter would look nice. And I'm just going to adhere this onto the white cardstock. And when I took the white cardstock, I realized I'd only cut the two sides, and the bottom and the top and the bottom edges I had not cut. And I didn't quite like the way it was, so I just went ahead and cut all the sides evenly so that I could center this panel onto that white note card, top folding note card. Because I had added glue, the paper had buckled quite a bit, so I had to use this foam adhesive to make sure that the cardstock adheres evenly, the surface is even and flat when I go to adhere it onto the note card. Now, you don't have to be crazy like me and add foam adhesive. It is pricey to add foam adhesive like this. The best option would be to, if you have fun foam, you can cut it to the size of the cardstock and use that in place of the foam adhesive. I did not have any fun foam with me, and that's why I went crazy with foam adhesive, and I didn't want any buckling after doing all this work. I didn't want the card to sag in the center. You know what I'm saying? So I just added all that foam adhesive, and I just added that to the top of this white note card. That pretty much completed this card. But I want to also mention I made quite a few of these flowers, and you can easily use them. Well, I'll show you in a bit right now all the other flowers that I created. Here you go. I made quite a few of them. I'm going to use them on wine tags, and I'm going to give them as gifts. And I'm also going to use this actually as gift tags. I'm going to show it here on this embossing powder. Think of it as a gift, and just you can add this flower right on top of it in the center instead of a bow or a ribbon, and how beautiful will that look. I hope you give this 3D poinsettia or 3D flower, any 3D flower, a go, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.